raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
We have been given a gift by God today to usher in a new dynasty.
Now you get RFK Jr.
Don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again?
You get Tulsi Gabbard.
Putting our country in a continual state of war.
You get Elon Musk and you get J.D. Vance.
A hell of a way to start the next 4 years.
The right-wing Avengers.
We have an army of digital soldiers.
Department of Defense under Donald Trump will achieve peace through strength.
Shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one.
The rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
The golden age of America has most definitely begun.
Begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay.
They're getting the dirtbags off these streets.
There's one guy who can fix this shit, and it's Donald Trump.
What's storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later gotta cut you down, sooner or later gotta cut you down. Go and tell that long-tongued liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him the God's gonna cut him down, tell him that God's gonna cut him down. Well, my goodness gracious, let me tell you the news. My head's been wet with the midnight dew. I've been down on bended knee, talking to the man from Galilee. He spoke to me in a voice so sweet, I thought I heard a shuffle of angels' feet. He called my name and my heart stood still when he said, John, go do my will. Go tell that long-tongued liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him that God's gonna cut him down, tell him that God's gonna cut him down. You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later gotta cut you down, sooner or later gotta cut you down. Well, you may throw your rock and hide your hand, working in the dark against your fellow man, but as sure as God made black and white, what's done in the dark will be brought to the light. You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later gotta cut you down, sooner or later gotta cut you down. Go tell that long-tongued liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him that God's gonna cut you down, tell him that God's gonna cut you down, tell him that God's gonna cut you down.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh. Welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Friday. A late start tonight. Had another wrestling match tonight with my daughter. Almost dislocated her elbow, but she is good. And then tomorrow night as well, we got another wrestling match. And don't worry, just a few more weeks of wrestling season to go. It's only football and wrestling season that we have this going on. So, but anyways, usually we're at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, or 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7:30 p.m. Central. But just with my schedule, kids, sports, activities, it just takes its toll. But I'm glad you guys understand what a great audience we have out there. I haven't had any feedback on the new website. So For anybody out there who didn't know, we published a new website. It's kind of in its beta test phase right now, just checking it out and seeing if people like it. If you've checked it out, if you looked at it, let me know what you think. And I'll actually pull it up here right now so people can take a look at it so they know that it's actually me when they go over there. But redpills.tv is the web link you can go to. Redpills.tv, and it go right in there, and it'll eventually have the live stream actually playing. Oh, well, look at that's yesterday's stream, but it'll have live streams playing. But our Substack is up there, auto updating on every time we post. You have all of our video archive right here. You got our music, you got our articles, merch shop, sponsors, support us, everything you can find, even information about me. Look at that. And a much skinnier, younger day. So website is updated, redpills.tv if you want to go check it out there. And if you are just joining in and you are on any of our great platforms that you're watching on, whether it's YouTube, Rumble, X, and you're just first time here, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. I promise you, you're going to want to hear what I have to say tonight. This is going to be pretty good. We're going to be talking about the Great Reset 2.0. And right now, Donald Trump is on a posting frenzy. That's all I keep on getting is one notification after another of Donald Trump posting. And we're going to talk about that actually right at the beginning of the show. So this was interesting. This was after DEF CON 0. I got off last night. I wish I saw it during DEF CON because I would have went and actually talked about this. But I'm going to pull this up. This was Dan Scavino last night. And there's only one that I found that had kind of contextual reference frame and everything like that. But he posts this video of Donald Trump. Now look in the right-hand corner, 26 degrees, 938, right? But then listen to what's playing. Nassoon Dorma. Oh, is that the indication we had all been waiting for? I think it's very possible that it is. So Nessim Dorma at 26 degrees at 938. So the two different posts that go with this, think about it logically. The only way is military fully controlled. And then N doesn't refer to Nazi. The continued Nazi ideology is relevant. Events will clarify. Think subgroups. And I think that has a lot to do with what's going on in Minnesota. In my mind, because of the color revolution that's going there, the factions of the Marxists that are operating there. But this is what I find incredibly interesting. Last night, Scavino post Nessim Dorma. What happened today? Something happened today that the big news media outlets are not talking about. And Donald Trump is actually on the posting frenzy right now, and he's posting all about it. Number one, former Dominion executive Eric Coomer has admitted to working with foreign actors in the 2020 election per court records when he was deposed by Patrick Byrne. That's huge. Huge. Okay. Then today, the FBI raided Fulton County, Georgia's election headquarters in regards to the 2020 election fraud. And what's Donald Trump posting about right now? Everything under the sun, but a lot of stuff about the 2020 election fraud. This is spectacular. He's posted about Minnesota. He's posted about election fraud. And it's time. It's happening right now. So Patrick Bet David actually did a briefing on this, reading a lot of the unsealed parts of the rape. So let's listen to this.
Fulton County in Georgia is under scrutiny after it emerged that some early votes from 2020 election were not signed by poll workers. Writing on X, various commentators allege voter fraud. The allegations came after on December 9th hearing before the Georgia State Election Board. And Brumbaugh, attorney for Fulton County Board of Registration Elections, said that some of the ballots were counted, lacked required poll worker signature during the 2020 election. Vote tabulation tapes are signed to verify the accuracy of votes before they are transported to a central office and used for auditing the ballot, because there is no evidence that the ballots were not legitimate because they weren't signed. And some commentators noted that this was procedural lapse. A recounted hand audit of ballots in Georgia at the time confirmed Joe Biden won the debate. In the hearing, the lawyer did not dispute that the tapes were not signed. It was a violation of the rule, she said. President Trump and his allies have consistently claimed without evidence that the 2020 election was stolen from President Joe Biden, did not win in Georgia and other states. Trump claimed that the ballots were duplicated and that there were other voter fraud issues in the county. Vinny, what have you learned about the story?
And Humberto,
this is a Newsweek story I just read.
Yeah, I put it in to Rob's Slack. You'll see the girl in court, and she's admitting to it. Look at the Slack that I Slack Rob. But I want everybody to remember, not only was Trump saying it, when we were all saying it, when you were watching, voting. Yes, thanks. Humberto, hold on one second. When we were talking about cheating in Georgia, and this is Fannie Willis, this whole situation, okay? And let's not forget, Joe Biden won Georgia by 11,779 votes, okay? Now, 5 years later, they're admitting 315,000 votes were illegally counted.
Oh, this is going to get good because we don't know necessarily what grand jury this is coming out of, or if this is just led by the DOJ. But last night you get Nessun Dorma, and then today you get the FBI out there raiding Georgia. And do you think Arizona, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania could potentially be next? If you go back 8 months, John Solomon came out and said that there's 4 grand juries that are forming up: New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Florida. We know of right now 2 grand juries that have formed up. Fort Pierce, Florida, that you have Jason Quinones over there, the U.S. attorney, and then you have Eileen Canna that's overseeing that. You have Lindsay Halligan over in Virginia, and I think that that's more of kind of a distraction because the main grand jury is over there in Florida. But then you have one in Pennsylvania and one in New York. I believe the one in New York happens to be with the Clinton Foundation pay for play. That's just my thoughts. Pennsylvania, I believe, is the grand jury that is looking into voter fraud. I don't know if it's convened yet or what's going on with it, but I think we're going to see some news coming about on that probably in the next few weeks. But today was monumental because it's showing that not only is the Trump administration pushing forward right now, they turned the switch on January 1st, but now we're starting to see the potential for accountability that is actually coming. So pretty huge. Then Senate Leader John Thune says the SAVE Act will now require photo ID in addition to U.S. citizens to vote in U.S. elections. So the SAVE Act is heading to the House floor to get voted on. That's another huge milestone. And I'm just continuously refreshing Donald Trump's True Social over here, looking to what he's going to say next. And he's posting all different types of stuff. He's posting about Alex Preddy. He's posting about the election fraud, Georgia. So right now, we have to understand that this is just the beginning of something much, much greater that is about to come. Okay. So there's a few things. I posted this last night. And if you guys did not read Alpha Warrior's post last night, I highly recommend you go check this out. Now, I know we posted this multiple different times before. We've talked about this multiple different times before. But I said, Mr. President, it is time. Below this is a message to our president. Ensure that it gets reposted, shared, and amplified to real Donald Trump receives this message. And this is an open letter to the President of the United States from the trenches of the Fifth Generation War, January 27th, 2026, President Donald J. Trump. And I'm going to read this to you because this is really, really important. History records that republics do not usually fall from invasion alone, but from hesitation, from rot concealed by ceremony, and from men who waited too long to act while believing time itself would be merciful. You already know what the people need most. They need you to act, not for applause, not for legacy, not for politics, but for the survival of the republic. I cannot imagine the weight you carry, the burden not only of America, but of a world still ordered by her strength. History has never been kind to men asked to decide between stability and justice, between patience and resolve. Yet every generation is eventually judged not by the dangers it faced, but by whether its leaders met the hour. George Washington warned us plainly in his farewell address that the spirit of encroachment tends to consolidate the powers of all the departments in one. He understood that tyranny rarely announces itself. It advances under the language of order, expertise, and protection. The danger is not theoretical today. It is present, organized, and patient. Gatekeepers now surround the presidency, shielding you from full intelligence under the pretense of stewardship, delaying action not for prudence, but for preservation of their own power. Some do so out of cowardice, others for darker reasons. History shows us this pattern repeatedly. Caesar had a Senate, Lincoln had his saboteurs, Kennedy had his shadows. I trust you, sir, but trust does not negate truth. And the truth from the trenches is this: the warriors will endure. They always do. It is the everyday American, besieged by propaganda, exhausted by uncertainty, exploited by operators manipulating your timeline, who is at risk of despair. Lincoln wrote in 1862 that the struggle was not merely to save the Union, but to prove that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Americans today fear not only losing victories, but losing permanence. They fear that if accountability never comes, every gain will be temporary, every reform reversible, every sacrifice erased the moment your administration ends. They have seen this movie before. They remember how abuses went unpunished. They remember institutions closing ranks. They remember January 6th, not as a singular event, but as a warning shot. Patriots understand something uncomfortable but true. If the forces that abused power before are allowed to return unrestrained, what comes next will make past injustices look unrestrained by comparison. Thomas Paine wrote, "These are the times that try men's souls." He did not write those words in comfort, but in crisis, when clarity itself was a weapon. That is where we stand now. Our enemies, foreign and domestic, visible and concealed, exploit the anxiety within your base. They thrive on ambiguity. They profit from delay. They feed on silence. Against them stand digital soldiers, citizen journalists, and ordinary Americans who fight daily in the information and psychological battle space to maintain clarity and hope. But hope alone cannot hold a nation, our nation. Americans need to see, not theatrics, but measurable accountability. They need evidence that the President of the United States recognizes that this is not ordinary politics, but an undeclared war on sovereignty, truth, and self-government. Eisenhower warned us of the permanent power structure growing beyond civilian control. Jefferson warned that when government fears the people, there is liberty. But when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. Those warnings were not metaphors. They were instructions. We know the margin between controlled action and chaos is thin, perhaps no wider than a hair. But that is precisely why we chose you. That is why Providence spared you. History shows that God does not preserve men for comfort, but for consequences. You are not alone. We stand behind you to support you, beside you to fight with you, and if necessary, in front of you to protect you. And then here it is. Put General Flynn between you and the deep state. History shows that republics survive when decisive leadership is shielded by loyal force, not bureaucracy. Grant did not wait for perfect conditions. Washington crossed the Delaware not because victory was assured, but because delay guaranteed defeat. Waiting until conditions are ripe is wisdom. Waiting after they are ripe is failure. For God, family, and country, sir. This message comes not from pundits or platforms, but from the trenches of an information and psychological war that will one day be studied as a battlefield and decided America's future. May history record that when the moment came, you did not hesitate. Semper Fi, Alfredo Luna Jr., Alpha. Great post, Alpha. But I have a feeling that we'll be hearing from General Michael Flynn in the coming days or weeks, and I'm almost positive about it. Things have delayed that. We've been hearing this for a long time, but let me just assure you that things have delayed that. Things that are talked about in that message right there have delayed that. But I believe that the time is now, and things are going to start rolling with this. And Trump is still posting. This is crazy. Excuse me. And not everything loads really, really fast on True Social for some reason. So tonight's show is called The Great Reset 2.0. And in order to understand what I mean by 2.0, we have to understand kind of where we are at in the landscape. And then the news that I'm going to go through, and a lot of it is going to be economic, is going to make a lot more sense, I hope. Where is Alpha? Alpha is home. I just talked to Alpha last night, been texting him the last few days. Alpha is doing good, and Alpha, I believe, is doing his shows tonight. Back for the first time. He was on a little sabbatical. He had a little vacation he had to take. So, number one, Carol Parkinson 11 on Rumble. New Red Pill website is awesome. $5 Rumble rant. Thank you so much, Carol. I appreciate that. What else do we got? I'm just easily distracted by certain things, is when you start to look at the chat and everything, you get easily distracted. But okay, so that was the only Rumble rant that I saw come in. If more do come in, I'll try to read them as they go. All right. The Great Reset. To understand the Great Reset, the first thing that we have to understand is a book that I talk about a lot. There's actually two books. So there's one that's an informational data set called Generations. It's about this thick. And it was written by two college professors, Strauss and Howe, from Columbia University. And they analyzed 500 years of history after the collapse of the Roman Empire to the modern day. And they started to realize that there were patterns that were repeated in history, not just within the individual, but within civilization itself. So Strauss and Howe's theory of generational cycles argues that history moves from repeating 80 to 100-year cycles called sacula, each with 4 phases. A high, strong institutions and social cohesion. The awakening, cultural rebellion and value shifts. The unraveling, institutions weaken, polarization rises. And then crisis, also known as the fourth turning, system level breakdown and reset. What the fourth turning says is actually happening. What the fourth turning is actually talking about is actually happening right now. We are in the crisis phase. That phase historically includes economic collapse or restructuring, political legitimacy crises, war or major geopolitical conflict, massive institutional reorganization. That is literally everything that's happening. Past examples: American Revolutionary War, new political system, Civil War, new federal structure, Great Depression plus World War II, Bretton Woods, IMF, World Bank, modern welfare state. Those all occurred in the fourth turnings. What reset means in this framework, it's not a conspiracy, not a coordinated global plan. It means the old system becomes unsustainable. It collapses under its own contradictions, and a new system is built out of necessity. It's bottom-up chaos forcing top-down change. I'll say that one again. It's bottom-up chaos forcing top-down change. The key point: the fourth turning says a reset is unavoidable, but who benefits from it is not predetermined. Power can centralize or decentralize depending on who wins the crisis. In 2014, Klaus Schwab authored a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's actually a really good read from a psychopath's perspective when you read about it. So Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, and no, I'm not going to do the funny accent. My voice hurts today. Launched the phrase "the Great Reset" in 2020 during COVID. In his own framing, it was about resetting capitalism, rebuilding supply chains, accelerating digital transformations, climate-driven economic restructuring, and public-private governance models. So now go back to the fourth turning, and you have economic collapse and restructuring, political legitimacy crisis, war and major geopolitical conflict, massive institutional reorganization. This is the foundation of what Klaus Schwab based the Great Reset upon. So in his books, the fourth industrial revolution and various other talks at the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab discusses the strategies that they would take within and the new policies and regulations that would arrive through the Great Reset or through the foundation of what they were building. So you got to kind of imagine this for a second. The globalists, the self-proclaimed elitists, the London bankers, the central bankers, the New World Order, if you want to call them that, the deep state, they all understood these cycles. They knew that this time frame was coming to where there would be a great reset. This is why they robbed the shit out of the piggy bank. They stole directly from everybody and didn't care about the consequences because they knew that the system was eventually going to collapse. There would be absolute chaos, and that would be their moment to centralize all power, money, and control into their one world government. Understand? And then organizations like the World Economic Forum come in. And they consult directly with the United Nations, consult with European nations and other nations around the world. They get members that are spread throughout the political centers and various different governments of the top countries in the world. And they bring about ideas for policy making. One of them, foundational, is known as ESG, Environmental, Social, and Governance. Now, you might not have heard of ESG before this time frame, but I tell you, you actually have heard of ESG. Environmental. This is the climate change. This is the Green New Deal. This is the Green Agenda. Social. Under social, you get another acronym called DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Under governmental, you get something known as PPP, Public-Private Partnerships. Basically fascism wrapped in fancy acronyms. That was the framework that was being implemented from the World Economic Forum into the United Nations and the global institutions and the large financial institutions that would trickle it down from there. Klaus Schwab talked about what's called stakeholder capitalism. Corporations, governments, NGOs, and global institutions jointly managing society instead of a nation, states, and voters being primary decision makers. I'll say that again. Instead of nation states and voters being the primary decision makers in stakeholder capitalism, corporations, governments, NGOs, and global institutions jointly manage society. That's the public-private partnership. Fascism wrapped in acronyms. In other words, corporations are not elected by you and me. Governments are, but in what country? NGOs are not elected by you and me, and global institutions are absolutely not elected by you and me. In other words, you have an unelected bureaucracy that rules and dominates the world through stakeholder capitalism. So through the fourth industrial revolution, you get AI governance, digital IDs, central bank digital currencies, automation of labor, algorithmic regulation. You get technocratic management, policies guided by experts, data systems, global frameworks, not by national democratic policies. In Schwab's own words, and this is paraphrased, crises represent a rare but narrow window to reimagine and redesign the world. So from the globalist perspective, the reset is using systemic shock to accelerate structural transformation in how economies and societies are governed. This is top-down managed transformation, not organic rebuilding. And why do people see this as dangerous? From a power analysis perspective, the WEF, the World Economic Forum version of reset, tends to mean less national sovereignty, more transnational regulatory control, more surveillance infrastructure, more corporate state fusion, and fewer ways for citizens to resist policy and regulation. It doesn't abolish capitalism. It restructures it into something closer to corporate technocratic feudalism, which, by the way, dun, 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 how many times have you heard when you call China communist, people are like, oh, no. It's a convergence of communism with capitalism running their economies. It's not capitalism running their economies. It is corporate technocratic feudalism. Take technocratic and put in the CCP, the PLA. Understand that on every single company in China, the CCP has the majority vote share. As in, they can come up and they can veto anything they want. They can make all the different changes for those companies and corporations. It's fascism. So, okay, not Marxism, not free markets, more like digital mercantilism with social controls. And this is how China has operated. They have social credit systems that are devised within their society that are operating right now that stop people from getting on trains, from entering their apartments, from purchasing various different items. China was the test bed, the beta test for the New World Order. This is why in the 1960s, you get people like David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger and John Templeton, and you get George Soros investing billions of dollars into Mao's China and the industrialization of China to bring it about 30 years later, because they built the infrastructure over 30 years later, to where they get Bill Clinton in the office and he passes NAFTA and GATT and moves all American jobs over there. Why? Because it was a transitional system. The test for China was the next 20 years from 1990 into the mid 2000s when Barack Obama came in and the final punches were laid that China had grown up powerful. And the next thing was to just build up its military very, very rapidly and very, very fast. And they would take over the world at that point in time. So this is where we are at right now. We are in this fourth turning. We are in the idea of the Great Reset. Now, in the midst of this Great Reset, Donald Trump seems to have plans of his own. I said it before that Donald Trump has flipped the script on the globalists. We talked about unrestricted warfare. Now, in order for the globalists, in order for the self-proclaimed elitists, the old European aristocracy, the central bankers, the China deep state, in order for all of that to implement this into the world, it took mass amounts of resources. It took mass amounts of psychological manipulation and warfare. It took generations of manipulating, social engineering society to the point it is today. I mean, think about how many radical ideological leftists that you have in the world today. That's not natural. That is social manipulation at its finest. This is why that social manipulation has massive bouts of mental illness. Think about that for a second. This is why they want to cut their tits off and chop their dicks off. And this is why they want to dress as women and touch little children, because it's a mental illness. And it's a mental illness, not because these are their own thoughts, but because it is a social manipulated construct that has been devised for them. And they took the bait, they ate the cookies, and they became completely radicalized by a system that was designed to do exactly that. And this has been decades in the making. This is what Yuri Bezmenov warned about with the radical Marxists. And at the end of the day, yeah, we can call it technocratic, whatever. It's Marxism at its core. So, where does that leave us today? Well, over the course of the last year, we know that Donald Trump has made certain moves, and these moves have been incredibly strategic against the global institutions, against China, against what we would consider to be the New World Order. In Davos just last week, Howard Lutnick came out and said that the New World Order has failed. Globalism has failed. Not only that, is you had multiple people from the globalist infrastructure stand up and say it failed. It's done. It failed. Now we have to think of a new system. Well, Donald Trump already had the new system ready and in place and being implemented. The new system, instead of a rules-based international order that came about at the end of World War II, Bretton Woods and the various different global agreements that came about and treaties that came about. And if you don't understand the rules-based international order or the New World Order, what this basically is that responsibilities were divvied up among various different nations or continents. China became the manufacturing and processing center of the world. Europe became consumability and social welfare problems, while not investing within their infrastructure, not investing within their people, and not investing within the defense, because the United States acted as the defensive posture structure, the police of the world for the other parts of the system. This was eventually supposed to end up with a segmentation of the world into centralized unions, the Asian Union, the European Union. Oh, we already have that. And the North American Union, of which each one of those unions would have their own centralized currency, and they would operate in a global framework very similar to what we just explained right there. That failed, and it failed miserably for the globalists. Now, here's the one point that nobody's talking about. It failed because in 2016, Donald J. Trump got elected to the presidency of the United States of America. And he began at that point in time to wake up every single person, because Q came around and woke up hundreds of millions of Americans and hundreds of millions of more people around the world, that we took back the fucking information domain. Now, I want people to, you got to see this from the perspective. Globalism failed, not because of policy, not because of regulation. You got to remember, they had decades of social constructive manipulation, of radicalizing people, and they had it down to a science. We're talking about MK Ultra on crack in our educational centers, in a kindergarten, grade school, in universities. Okay. But see, once you realize, the moment it occurs to you that this is warfare, it all changes. The moment that you realize that this is an insurgency, it all changes. The moment it becomes clear that we are in the domain of unrestricted warfare, the tactics and the strategies change. And see, at the same time that Donald Trump came into power in 2016, certain things were happening technologically. Things changed. These things became more pronounced in your everyday life. And that came about because of massive technological infrastructure that was built between 2000 to 2010, became implemented and connected. You had computers, basically computing power that could be iterated anywhere in the world in massive amounts of numbers. You could spool up computers anywhere in the world to take in data loads. You didn't have this before. That's what allows videos and GIFs and images and texts and tweets and all these things to be spread throughout and connected in this grand thing that we call the internet and social media. The arrogant globalists and self-proclaimed elitists and all of the old aristocracy, they got cocky. They didn't see the most important part about their warfare. They thought they had already won. But the one thing that they forgot is that all domains of warfare, land, air, sea, cyber, space, social, psychological, all domains of warfare have a primary domain. That primary domain, information. Information is the primary data stream that occurs in all of those domains of warfare. And if you can control the idea of information, if you can control the information domain, you won the war without firing a shot. And in 2016, that process began to happen, and it began to erode away at the construct of the New World Order by exposing it, by having people wake up one at a time, going out there, tweeting about it, putting it in Facebook groups, going on the YouTube, going on to other platforms, and talking about the discoveries they were making of what was happening underneath their noses in this world. They documented it. They wrote about it. Blogs, articles, videos. And people began to listen because people changed the way that they consumed information. It was no longer trust within the media. It was no longer watching 30 or 60-minute news broadcasts. It was 124 character tweets. It was memes with some graphic image with a few lines of words that had striking meaning that struck the hearts of people, that woke them up. And then they follow somebody, and that somebody puts out a video, and then they follow that video, and they go, oh my God, look at the research this guy did. They go out there and they validate that research and go, oh my God, it's a rabbit hole. And this begins to spread like wildfire to the point where the majority of the country no longer has trust within government and no longer has trust within the mainstream news and media. That the fake news begins to decline. It begins to lose viewers. It begins to lose monetization. Do you remember from the time of 2020 to almost about a year ago, the only ads you would ever see on CNN, MSNBC, the only ads you would see on mainstream media were for pharmaceutical companies, period, hands down. Pharmaceutical companies. They're the only place that was paying them revenue, and that was just to keep them alive because they didn't have the views to actually substantiate the revenue that they were generating. We took back the idea of information. We are the news now. And that is the one stroke that helped to set this process into play of defeating the one world government, the New World Order, of dismantling this old guard system, of bringing about the possibility that Donald Trump would get back in 2025. And when he came back in, we're going to see accountability. That when he came back in, he's going to be dismantling this old guard system that was setting up their new whole centralized one world government system while awaiting for the collapse. Because the collapse, it's inevitable. And in 12 months, Donald J. Trump, as President of the United States of America, completely dismantled their entire infrastructure. USAID, gone. Money funds going to NGOs, gone. Pulling the power and the rug away from the European nations, away from NATO, gone. Dismantling the Belt and Roads and the New Silk Road initiative by China, gone. And at the same time, he began to set up a parallel system for the United States of America, inviting anybody who wanted to come in on it with trade deals. And this parallel system that he began to build up, what was it for? It's for the collapse. It's for the thing that we know is inevitable that is going to happen. In other words, Donald Trump hijacked their point of chaos and crises and built a system that leaves no other choice but have to be implemented the moment that that chaos ensues and skyrockets beyond controllability. Hence why this is very delicate, and everything that we're seeing is based upon strategic timing, because you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know when the globalist bankers are going to go out there and begin manipulating the economy and leading it to crash. You don't know their plans. So in the last year, we've watched the 2025 PSYOP, but we also watched Donald Trump operating in geopolitics through game theory, limiting his adversaries' moves and counter moves, forcing him down a decision path that was predictable by him, of which he had already set up 2, 3, 4 steps down the road that predictability of their decision making to where he checkmated them. That's where we are right now. One of those keys was the triangle of oil or energy for China. China can only last less than 100 days with its current oil supply and a strategic petroleum reserve. Less than 100 days. And that's not including all of its civilian infrastructure. That's not including all the coal and everything like that goes into civilian infrastructure. Only military. China gets its oil from Iran, Venezuela, and Russia primarily. It gets it on the open markets. It buys some from India, who buys it from Iran and Russia, and then buys it cheap and then resells it for a profit to China. Yes, that happens. Europe does that too. That Europe is getting their oil from Venezuela. But when Donald Trump began to cut off Chinese energy, Venezuela took Venezuelan oil, put it under the United States control. The Venezuelan people are going to get all the money. But then he says, China's going to get this oil. And China's like, we don't want it. He's like, okay, we're going into Iran. Now China is standing up saying, don't go into Iran. And I told you, a war's coming. That we are most likely going to see some sort of kinetic conflict between the United States of America and China. Now, let me get into some news that we're seeing come out today. Trump says that a massive armada is heading towards Iran, calls on Iran to come to the table to make a deal, or the next attack will be far worse. So the U.S. and the EU drew red lines for Iran. No more uranium enrichment, cut down your missile stash, drop support for Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, all of it. These are the three demands on the table if Iran wants to avoid potential military response. Now, do you remember the other day when I told you that Trump gave Khamenei, the mullahs, the regime, ultimatums, and he gave them a deadline? There it is. No more uranium enrichment, cut down your missile stash, drop support for Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis. 2 days ago, yesterday, we saw a massive explosion at an Iranian nuclear facility. Now, we don't know what caused this, but my guess is that it wasn't an accident. It was a message being sent to Iran. So Iran has threatened the United States, and they have cut all communication off with Trump. He says any military action by the U.S. from any origin at any level will be regarded as a state of war, and the response will be immediate and unprecedented. One thing about Khamenei and the mullahs and the regime is they have to look strong for their people, or their people will overthrow them, especially at a time right now where there's mass protests going on. They just killed, thousands upon thousands of people. They could be overthrown any day, and they need to continue to look strong against their proclaimed adversaries. So we're hearing that backdoor negotiations with Iran have completely failed. Iran has refused all of Americans' proposals. This is not good for Iran. I said, pretty sure that the Qataris and the Pakistanis are still keeping lines open, trying to de-escalate, because this is very critical for them because, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, they get a lot of their oil very, very cheaply from Iran. A little known secret in the street. Chinese ambassador to Russia, Zhang Wanghai, says U.S. plans to control Greenland destabilize the world. They're seeking to block, close all these passages is not merely against our will and our interests. It's undermining stability and peace in the world. In other words, and I want you to understand what that means by what they're saying there. China's saying that if the United States controls Greenland, we will go to war. And yesterday, Xi Jinping, or the Chinese foreign ministers, came out and said that any military action by the United States in Iran is going to bring about a staunch response by China. We are at the crossroads. See, people are like, Donald Trump said no new wars. Well, guess what, guys? This isn't a new war. It's not so for all the FAGA out there, for all the black pillars, and Donald Trump promised no new wars. Guys, this isn't a new war. This is a war that's been going on for 100 fucking years. This is a war that is ongoing in civilization that never ends. And Donald Trump is finding a means to the end. Donald Trump is finding a way to bring the global community to a point and position to where we all have mutual respect and mutual sovereignty, and we respect each other within a global framework that operates for the people. You know, Donald Trump, when he came into office in 2025, his administration, there was one selection in his administration I was incredibly skeptical of. I did not like this pick in his administration, and I was very nervous about it. When I originally heard Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, I was like, oh no. After a year of the Trump administration, I can say he was hands down the best man for the job. Listen to Marco Rubio discuss Maduro's capture in Congress.
About that mission remains ongoing, and that is the counter-narcotic mission that we continue to carry out in the, as controversial as it may be, you may not all be fans of it, obviously, but it is happening in the Eastern Pacific, and it is also happening in the Caribbean Basin. The problem is, or the good news is, there aren't a lot of drug boats moving in the Caribbean Basin anymore, and that's what we had briefed Congress upon. This specific mission that you've talked about, one of the reasons why you rehearse it is to see if it's even feasible, to basically go to the president and say, is this something that's even an option on the table? The truth of the matter is that this mission could not have been briefed to Congress because it wasn't even in the realm of possible until very late in December, when all of our efforts to negotiate with Maduro had failed, and the president was finally presented these options and made these decisions. It was also a trigger-based operation. It may never have happened. It required a number of factors to all align at the right place at the right time in a very limited window, and it wasn't even clear if it was ever going to be possible. There's also the aspect which I do not control, and that is deference to the Department of War on operational security. Despite the fact that we had kept this quite constrained, the truth of the matter is that this was leaked. We now know it was leaked by a contractor at the Department of War that, had it been published, would have endangered the lives of people and/or would have probably canceled the ability to carry out the mission. So this is a real tension, and one that I'm doing the best I can to try to manage within the constraints of two things: operational security and also decisions being made. There are multiple contingencies for events all over the world, including some that none of us think were ever going to come to fruition. And in this particular case, one of the reasons why you rehearse these things in advance is to know whether it's even possible. Is this even doable? And what are the risks associated with doing? So you can present options to the president, who ultimately makes these decisions. In the case of reimagining NATO, it most certainly has to be reimagined. And the reason why it has to be reimagined is not because its purpose is reimagined. Its capabilities have to be reimagined. Let me give you as a point of example. There's a lot of talk about security guarantees. And it's something that there's general agreement about now with the case of Ukraine. But those security guarantees basically involve the deployment of a handful of European troops, primarily French in the UK, and then a U.S. backstop. But in fact, the security guarantee is the U.S. backstop. It is not and I'm not diminishing the fact that some countries in Europe are willing to place troops in a post-war Ukraine. What I'm pointing out is that is irrelevant without the U.S. backstop. And the reason why you need such a strong U.S. backstop is because our allies and our partners have not invested enough in their own defense capabilities over the last 20 or 30 years. Now, hopefully that's going to change.
He nailed it. You know, when was the last time you saw a Secretary of State in front of the Senate that was that articulated, that spot on, to the point where the senator couldn't argue one point with him, couldn't say one thing about what he was talking about, because he told the freaking truth and he nailed it. He said, look what we're doing. We're fixing the screwed up world that Joe Biden and Obama had produced and created. And it's not easy. It's very difficult. President Trump's team is now weighing options to oust the communist Cuban regime, including a naval blockade to choke off oil imports. This comes a day after massive blackouts in Cuba. And so what we're seeing is any nation, any country that was directly associated with kind of a proxy variant of the New World Order, of the one world government, of the European global elites, the old guard, or primarily China, which was their surrogate. is being basically systematically eliminated, dismantled. At the same time, all this is happening in this large scope of unrestricted warfare. You have Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, coming out just 2 weeks ago saying, the template we are using in Minnesota, we are going to use in all the states. Now, I want you to see what the Trump administration did here. So I posted it yesterday. I showed you guys that 2 days ago, I posted what Trump needs to do. Excuse me, in Minnesota. He needs to de-escalate, needs to investigate, then he needs to prosecute. Now, why did I put that out there? Because I understand what they're doing. See, the surge of ICE and federal agents into Minnesota was to prompt the riots. It's like I said, it wasn't a matter of if, it was only a matter of when something would happen. Shit would hit the proverbial fan, and then people would begin to rise up because they fueled the fire. They stoked the fire. They threw the catalyst out there, and they took the bait. What happens? People begin to chat, communicate. They begin to network. You have, former Obama officials going out there, NGOs funding and fueling it. And they get the people on there in the buses. They're going, this is our time. This is our moment. Remember No Kings? Never happened. You remember all the other protests that were supposed to happen? Never happened. Why? Same damn thing. They stoke the fire. They build it up. All of a sudden, tens of thousands of people are on the street. They're all protesting. They're getting violent. Then Donald Trump goes, rug pull. Whoop. We're going to pull majority of ICE out. We're pulling Customs and Border Patrol out. We're just going to send Tom Homan in to work with BCI, to work with Minnesota law enforcement so Minnesota law enforcement can do it. And all we want is the high-level criminals, the rapists, the murderers, those types, the ones that are already in your prison, the ones you have active warrants for. Everybody else will leave alone. So over the next few weeks, what you're going to see is the federal presence diminish in there, and the protesters start to diminish. But here's the key. Scott Bessent said, the same template we are using in Minnesota, we're going to use nationwide. What was he talking about? He's talking about watching the money flows. He's talking about the NGOs that are fueling this, they're fueling training programs. There was a great part that came out today, and I'm not going to talk about Ilham Omar. I'll talk about it a little bit. The Ilham Omar incident that happened yesterday is nothing more than a Jussie Smollett. She staged this shit to bring attention off of her and make herself look like the victim. I think everybody sees that. Okay, so you have Mike Benz, who exposed the NGO channel of Dr. Maria Stephan, who, by the way, is former U.S. Institute of Peace, which Donald Trump ended, worked for the State Department, NATO-linked institutions, Department of Defense. She worked for the National Endowment for Democracy. She operated and used programs that she trained, basically how people to peacefully protest, color revolution style. Well, guess what? She's been in Minnesota. She's an active member of the SURJ, Showing Up for Radical Justice, which has organization chapters in Minnesota, including the Twin Cities. She's a trainer in the National Nonviolence Networks that regularly partner with local activists and community safety groups. Same time, Minnesota is home to Nonviolent Peace Force, an international NGO specializing in unarmed civilian protection and movement training, operating in the same nonviolence peace-building doctrine space that Stephan has built over her career, and she's associated with it. These people, these protesters, like I said, they were radicalized. Generations of radicalization through education. It's social constructed manipulation, social engineering that is massively manipulated to manipulate an entire society. It's not natural evolution that people are chopping their dicks and their tits off, right? So with this idea, now they come in and they train these people on the tactics. So what do they find? The signal chat groups. They find all these doctrines that go in there and how to do this. They were training people. There's money funneling all this. There's money paying all of these protesters. Well, they just rug pulled it. So we're going to see all this die down. But at the same time, This is when the U.S. Treasury goes in there, follows the money. Next, what you have is the investigations begin. They investigate Singham in China. They investigate all these other NGOs, Soros-related NGOs, the Tides Foundation that are associated with this funding. They take them down, right? They cut the head off the stake. They take the NGOs down. They arrest the generals, the captains, and the lieutenants. Then they push ICE back in. But now there's no infrastructure for the protest. There's no money flowing in. There's no organizational structure. So now they're able to do their job. Pretty damn genius. All right. Going back into the great, and this is all part of the Great Reset. I mean, this is the last straw for the global elitists, for the New World Order, the one world government. This is their last straw to take down Donald Trump. This is their point in the moment where they say, hey, if we can get color revolutions rising up in each and individual state, we still have millions of illegal immigrants, gang members, cartel members, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah, Unit 910. We still have them throughout the United States of America. So if we can get the color revolutions rising up in the violent protests in the major sanctuary cities, and we start to destabilize them, we can take over the government's command and control. We can take over the police stations and the National Guard precincts and take over the national armories. We can take over the electric grid. We can take over transportation, communication. We can take over water, and then we control those states. And then the millions of Chinese nationals, military-age males that came over the border, they just rise up and put their flag down, and now they own the whole freaking state. That was their plan. That was their plan. And so now they're going through the motions. And so what happened? They're going through the motions. Okay, here's our moment. Everybody get out there. And Donald Trump goes, rug pull. Oh, we're investigating the money, by the way. And by the next time this happens again, the money will be gone. So, Kevin O'Leary, Shark Tank Kevin O'Leary. I want you to listen to what he says on CNN. This is good. This is the next part of what we're talking about with the Great Reset 2.0.
What about if you're not left or right? You're just a taxpayer like me, a lowly taxpayer, and I'd like to investigate fraud. I want my money back if it was stolen from me. Is that okay or is that not okay?
Listen,
I want my money back.
Well, hold on. I mean, look, Kevin, the fraud is being has been investigated, is
Why are we
being
talking
investigated.
about that?
People are being prosecuted. The DOJ could be talking about that, but what they decided to do instead was send immigration officials into Minnesota, presumptively because they thought that the fraud was coming only from foreigners, when most of the Somalis who they were targeting.
I don't care where it's coming from. I want my money back.
So,
right, but what she is saying is that nothing they are doing, nothing they have done
to do with
is helping you get your money back.
I represent taxpayers, and I want my money back.
Then if you represent taxpayers, then tell the president that you should that he's spending a ton of money to terrorize.
I love this, because listen to what the CNN commentators are saying. Well, they're not doing anything to get the money back. They're not doing anything. Yes, they are. They what did I just say? Yes, they are. See, it was Waltz and Ellison who helped to mobilize all of the protesters. Remember in the signal groups, you had the lieutenant governor, you had staffers directly for Waltz, you had local politicians who are directly involved in this. This was them rising up because they were being investigated. And guess what? The investigations never stopped just because of ICE increased in there. And see, this was Donald Trump's play. It was a tactic to get their armies on the street to see who is who, using facial recognition software to identify the financiers, the lieutenants, the capos, all the infrastructure of how they were going to operate, and then rug pull it while the investigations still go on. And then you start to take down all the leadership. You start to take down the NGOs, you take down the corrupt politicians, and then you move back in and you get the rest of the illegal aliens out. And so, but what Kevin O'Leary said there, I want my money back. Start thinking about that whole phrase right there. Because he is absolutely 100% correct. We want our money back. And what I mean by that is we don't want that money to go back into the hands of government. We want that money back from those corrupted. We want their assets seized. We want all of their assets seized around the world. We want all that accumulated wealth returned to the United States and then redistributed as dividend checks back to the American taxpayers who paid for it. Oh, don't worry. We're going to talk about the Federal Reserve next. 1 second. See, we are in the midst of a financial revolution, economic revolution in the United States of America. The idea of income taxes is going away. There's a new financial system being implemented, and nobody's talking about it but people like you, me, and the Trump administration. Listen to Jerome Powell in one of his last days as Federal Reserve Chairman. I want you to listen to what this man says, okay?
The point of independence is not to protect policymakers or anything like that. It just is that every advanced economy democracy in the world has come around to this common practice. It's just an institutional arrangement that has served the people well, and that is to have a separation between to not have direct elected official control over the setting of monetary policy.
Wow. To not have direct elected control over monetary policy. Did he really just say that? Well, you want to know what I said to that? Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5, the United States Constitution. Congress shall have the power to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of other foreign coins. This is the core monetary authority. From this, Congress clearly has the power to create money, decide what counts as legal tender, and regulate currency values and standards. Monetary policy. See, the key here to understand of why the Federal Reserve actually exists. Now, I'm going to give you a lesson in constitutionality of law that even constitutional lawyers would agree with me on, but no court in the freaking country would ever hear this case. All right? Congress has the right, under Article 1, Section 8, Congress has been granted by the people the right for monetary policy, for the regulation of monetary policy, coin and print money and regulate the value thereof. Okay. In 1913, when the Federal Reserve Act came in, it was unconstitutional from the moment it hit the books. The moment it was ratified, the moment it was signed in by Woodrow Wilson, ratified by all the states, it was unconstitutional. Do you want to know why it was unconstitutional? Not for the reasons that you think. Most people think that the Federal Reserve Act is unconstitutional because, well, there's nothing that establishes a central bank, that we fought against central banks, and it wasn't fully ratified, that, Congress was on recess that day, and the states didn't fully ratify it afterwards, and so you never had the state majority, and it's not on the record books, and we search for those. I mean, these are the arguments that you have out there. Here is why, the most important damn reason why the Federal Reserve Act is 100% unconstitutional. You ready for this? There is no constitutional authority granted to Congress to delegate their powers elsewhere. Congress does not have the authority under the U.S. Constitution, under Article 1, to delegate their powers. Oh, yeah, there's broad interpretations. It's bullshit. There is no authority granted by the people to Congress to delegate their powers to a third party. That's why it's unconstitutional. Because they can't delegate that power in the first place. All right. You remember when Mark Carney said, he talked about the New World Order, he talked about China, then Trump came out and said, Governor Carney, you better not do that. And Carney came back and said, we have no intention of doing trade deals with China. But then just the other day, he said, I meant what I said in Davos, though. And he said, we're not going to stop. And so Trump's going to press on Canada. I guarantee you that. But Mark Carney is a globalist banker. What's happening right now economically? I want to show you a statistical analysis of what is happening economically right now. And I will tell you that it is not necessarily the Trump administration that is bringing it about. Okay? This is no limit gains on X. At no limit gains on X right here. Let me drag and pull this guy. Drag and pull. There it is. Okay. And let's read this. The impossible just happened. The probability of what is happening is near zero. Okay? 1 second. Three Six Sigma events occurred in 1 week. Bonds, silver, and gold. We are currently living through a statistical impossibility. He says, let me explain. Last Tuesday, the Japanese 30-year debt recorded what's called a Six Sigma session. 2 days ago, silver did even better. It was a 5 Sigma on the rally, then reached 6 Sigma on the drop in a single session. Gold right now, it's up 23% in less than a month. We're getting very close to a 6 Sigma event. That's 3 Six Sigma events in 1 week. To explain quickly, in finance, we measure price moves around an average using the standard deviation, which we call sigma. A 1 Sigma is mundane. A 2 Sigma is common. A 3 Sigma becomes rare. A 4 Sigma, exceptional. A 5 Sigma, exceptionally rare. A 6 Sigma, supposed to occur once in 500 million. Here are the 6 Sigma type episodes we saw previously. The October 1987 crash, 22% drop in 1 session. March 2020 COVID crash. The Swiss franc surge in January 2015. WTI oil turning negative in April 2020. But we've never had 3 consecutive events occur in 1 week. Do you see the point? A 6 Sigma event is almost never triggered by a simple macro headline. It almost always comes from a market structure, leverage, positions that are too concentrated, margin calls, collateral problems, and forced selling or buying. That's important to understand because we're talking about internal strains in the system's mechanics. As you know, the Japanese bond market sits at the heart of the global financial system. And I won't go back over the whole topic, but I've explained the Japanese bond market. But a 6 Sigma move in a market that enormous doesn't go unnoticed. Seeing a 6 Sigma move in silver a few days ago gives one a lot to think about. And now gold? That's absolutely insane. Why are we seeing extreme statistical events only days apart in such different markets? When a pillar of global funding becomes unstable, like the Japanese bond market, the yen carry trade, leverage tends to contract. And 2 things happen at the same time: forced selling in certain assets and forced buying of protection in others. Historically, precious metals are often among the beneficiaries. Long-term rates say something about credibility of stakes, that is, their ability to honor future debts without resorting massively to inflation. Precious metals say something about the credibility of currency itself. And when both become unstable at the same time, we're looking at a challenge to the monetary framework. He goes, I won't go on because I want to share the rest in another tweet tomorrow, but generally, when a regime starts to crack, the adjustments are brutal. It's exactly in those moments that several high Sigma events appear across different asset classes. I'll repeat it. Seeing 3 Six Sigma events back to back is not normal. Gold and silver are telling you explicitly that we are living through a real paradigm shift. Remember, I called every market top and bottom last 10 years. When I make a new move, I'll share it here publicly, let everybody see. So you guys should definitely go follow this guy. But I want you to also see a few other things that people are talking about. And I'm going to go into this in some detail because this is critically important to understand over the course of the next few weeks financially. And when I'm telling you to start taking profits in gold and silver. I'm not a financial advisor. I can't give you financial advice. Start taking profits. All I'm going to say about that. Peter Schiff, the gold maxi. That's all this guy talks about. Peter Schiff is gold. Gold is good. Gold is great. I want you to listen. You're about to get an education on the relationship between the gold and the economy and what happened.
The dollar is going to collapse. The dollar is going to be replaced by gold. Central banks are buying gold to back up their currencies. They're getting rid of dollars. They're getting rid of treasuries. We are headed for an economic crisis, again, that will make the 2008 financial crisis look like a Sunday school picnic. The biggest difference between the crisis that we're about to have and the one we had back then is this one is all in America. It's not going to be exported to the rest of the world. It's not a global financial crisis. It's an American financial crisis. The dollar is going to collapse.
Okay. Peter Schiff. Good call, Peter. But there's more. Now listen to Ray Dalio. And by the way, that Peter Schiff, his great-great-great-granddaddy was one of the founders of the Federal Reserve. Just keep that in mind. Listen to Ray Dalio, another globalist.
So, for example, last year, American markets significantly underperformed foreign markets. And people don't quite realize that. And the best asset class, in a sense, was gold, but think of that as being the money. So in answer to your question, okay, I've learned, that was a lesson I learned, that if there's a depreciation in the value of money, it makes everything look like it's going up. So for example, last year.
Did you hear that? If there's a depreciation in the value of money, it makes everything else look like it's going up. Remember this I shared with you yesterday? I said, oh, gold and silver erase, right? It's actually not the one I was looking for. Remember the picture I pulled up the wrong one. Remember yesterday I showed you the dollar declining and gold going up? That's literally what Ray Dalio just said. Now, let's listen to him once again. Say it again.
And it becomes an alternative. Don't think of gold as a metal that there's a speculative market in. Think about it as a money that central banks treat as a money, yet it's their second largest reserve currency is gold, and it becomes an alternative to fiat monies, and it becomes an alternative. Don't think of gold as...
So, gold is money. You're hearing this all over the place now. Now, do you know who Tether is? Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, he's on the board of directors of this company called Tether. Tether is a stable coin, USDT. Tether CEO Ardiano, we will become the gold central bank in the post-dollar world. What? Tether CEO reiterates the company's stance and confirms it's buying 1 or 2 tons of gold per week, now holding 140 tons of gold stashed in a nuclear bunker. But look what the post-dollar world, people. Now, I actually have a comment. I wish I could talk to him because I would say, they're saying Tether is now the largest known gold hoarder outside of banks and nation states, owning over 140 tons, $23 billion worth of gold in a nuclear bunker in Switzerland. Now, I have some news for Arduano over there at Tether. No, you are not the largest holder of gold in the world outside of banks and governments. You want to know why? Because the security force at the nuclear bunker in Switzerland are the largest holder of gold outside of banks and nation states. Got to remember, If the world collapses tomorrow, is Tether going to fly over in their jet with their 3 lawyers demanding their gold from armed guards who form an army around a nuclear bunker that's fortified, who hold all the gold? Get the fuck out of here. Hold the gold. Well, listen, I get it. And by the way, Tether Gold, Rumble, that's where your gold is actually stored, is in that nuclear bunker. Now, I say that because if the world collapsed, gold's kind of irrelevant at that point. You're not biting gold off to eat. But in a post-dollar world, this becomes incredibly important. But, see, Tether has a plan. See, they're not going to let the global economy just collapse. Did you understand that? They're not going to let the global economy just collapse. Because what if Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, and Donald Trump, and Elon Musk, and all these other people, what if they had a plan to take something like the Sovereign Wealth Fund and dump massive amounts of resources and assets, gold, silver, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, rare earth minerals and metals, oil, patents, stock buyage from companies that are getting investment capital that Donald Trump secured, and take that stock percentage, thrown into something known as the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and then say, hey, look, we got the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is real value, real money, real estate, U.S. property. You got massive amounts of minerals, 124 trillion worth, all sitting in the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And that those assets are what? Assets make you money. That's the difference between something that's an asset and something that's not an asset. Something that's not an asset is a liability. Here's two important things in the financial world if you didn't know it. Your vehicle is a liability, not an asset. Your home, your house that you own, is a liability, not an asset. Your home's not making you money. Well, Josh, I'm getting my equity. No, you're not. With inflation at 4 to 6% per year, and the growth of your house in the real estate market in a good year is 1 to 2%, you're losing money. Even though you're gaining equity, you're really just getting back the interest you're paying in. Your home and your vehicle are liabilities. So the difference between an asset and a liability is an asset makes you money. You own it and it makes money. Sovereign Wealth Fund, buckets of assets. Assets make money. Revenue is generated from the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And then what happens? That money that's generated pays for government. It pays for social programs. It pays for roads and bridges and infrastructure. And if it's paid for government, it paid for defense, roads, and there's excess left over. Now, dividends are issued to the shareholders. And the shareholders of the Sovereign Wealth Fund are the American people. But nowhere in there did I say Federal Reserve or federal income tax. Because that goes, you don't need that anymore. So then you ask, well, how does the government borrow money? Article 1, Section 8. Congress has the ability to coin and print money and regulate the value thereof. You don't need the intermediary. But who's going to bring about the actual money? Well, what they're going to do is they'll issue gold and Bitcoin bonds at 50-year maturity dates. Okay? Gold and Bitcoin bonds, because that's what's in the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Gold and Bitcoin maturity bonds for 50 years of maturity to stablecoin companies like Tether. And then Tether will issue a very specified stablecoin that represents the actual U.S. dollar. Josh, that's far-fetched. That's never going to happen. Already happened. USAT, made in America. Right here. The dollar-backed stablecoin designed for the internet age. Contract is already out. This is right. Tether is officially launched USAT, look at this, a U.S. regulated dollar-backed stablecoin built for the American market. So if the dollar collapsed tomorrow, USAT just sits at a value of 1. Oh, we just use USAT. Now, I got to wonder, who could have predicted any of this was going to happen? I mean, seriously. I mean, back in March 16th, 2025, did anybody write Substack articles on all of this? Trump's economic revolution, ending the Federal Reserve, sovereign wealth fund, Bitcoin reserves, and the path to a new financial system. Did anybody tell you that all of this was going to happen? I mean, the end of the Federal Reserve and sovereign wealth fund financing the U.S. without income tax. I mean, you should probably subscribe to the Substack. It's very important because they seem to be over the target. Well, fuck me silly. That's my Substack. redpillproject.substack.com. Again, redpillproject.substack.com. And it goes all in how it works and why it works. Now, on top of that, if you're like, that domain is just too long, I don't know how to find it. Yeah, then just go to this one. Just go to redpills.tv. Just go to it's not coming up. That's not it. Oh, that's the wrong one. For some reason, it's grayed out. It's weird. Yeah, just go to redpills.tv. You go to that website, redpills.tv, which is my website. And this is all you have to do. If that link for redpillproject.substack.com is too long for you, you go here. My website, redpills.tv. See, it says get Substack Intel. Just click that link and it'll open up my Substack. That easy. That's why we have a new website. Pretty cool. I'm going to get into one more thing on this exact topic because this is important. This is another thing I said was going to happen, and it's something that we all have to watch out for, okay? Now, first thing, I do have to go into Rumble, and I do have to do one of these. There's no really good one. Rumble sucks tonight. No offense, Rumble. I love you, but you're just not giving me very good options out here. We'll do this guy right here. Still haven't tried 1775 coffee. Now's your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped, only 1,000 units. You're getting the bold dark roast that hits hard, the smooth medium roast, and the vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focus. No crash. All single origin, small batch, toxin free, and mold free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's opinions, and a black 1775 tumbler. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. And I want to give out a shout out to JSW432. What's up, Jeff? For everybody out there, that's Jeff, the host of Fringe. Rocking with gold and silver, $20 Rumble rant there. Thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate that. And thank you, Rumble, for getting that. But I saw this come out today. And this is what I've been warning about, people. The $5.9 trillion of assets under management of Fidelity, a massive, large financial institution, is launching its own stablecoin. Remember when I told you that you're going to have Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Wells Fargo and Fidelity and Charles Schwab and all of these institutions launching their own stablecoins? Why? I've warned about this in the private sector as a move by large financial institutions to control their assets under management by ensuring their investors can't leave by discounted utilization of private stablecoins. What do I mean by that? Fidelity is going to issue stablecoins to their investors. So let's say that you have a money market account or an IRA, or you have an investment brokerage account with Fidelity. They're going to go in there and they say, hey, you got $100,000 in your retirement accounts. This is what we can do. We can actually give you a stable coin loan, and that stable coin will be accepted by all of these companies, and you can spend it there. And this is your interest rate, 1.2%, which is much lower than the 18% for a personal loan that you're going to pay elsewhere. And so why don't you just do business with us? And by that time, they're going to have strategic ownership of your assets. Now, when the banks begin to do this, this is where it gets even worse. When the banks start to do that. When the banks start to do that, you got to remember your money is flowing in every day. Now, if your money's flowing in every day into your bank accounts, and what do? They convert that money directly into stable coins. They give you the stable coin to go out there and buy. Now you have programmable cryptocurrencies in a centralized location of which they control. That's where the problem comes about. See, with USAT or US stable coins that are being developed right now, under the Genius and Clarity Act, you can't program them. Congress said you cannot program them ever, and no CBDCs. But private stable coins, through institutionalization, they can. So be careful with that. If they come out offering you a mortgage at 1%, all you have to do is transfer your money into JPM coin, which they're coming out with, called that one. And they tell you that, hey, we'll give you a 1% mortgage. You just have to convert all your money over the JPM coin, which can be utilized at Kroger's. It can be utilized at Walmart and all these other places. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's my warning to you. And then one piece of financial information. Buy Tesla's stock. Buy Tesla. Some news today. Google's DeepMind launches a new AI tool. This is going to blow your freaking mind. You ready for this stuff? This is crazy. DeepMind just launched a new tool called Alpha Genome, which can create entirely new designer DNA in humans. Wait a minute. That's on my Substack too, by the way. In case you didn't, that's on my Substack too. How do I know? Because I've been talking about this for years. Got a friend that works at Google. He works for Google Quantum AI. Not AI or quantum, Google Quantum AI. And what has he been doing for the last 5 years? Well, they acquired AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, about 5 years ago. And for the last 5 years, they've been going out there and buying data from data brokers, primarily in pharmaceuticals, medical, hospitals, doctors' offices, and they've been aggregating that data into a quantum AI. Why? Well, hold on. Let's back up. That's medical issues and conditions and those types of things and reactive natures of pharmaceuticals within the bio framework of the body. But do you also remember something else when we started talking about the Epstein stuff? Do you remember 23andMe? Susan Wojcicki, Sergey Brin's wife, her sister, the CEO of YouTube, right? Remember this? Sergey Brin's wife was the founder of 23andMe. 23andMe had a massive data breach. Millions upon millions of people's DNA information was lost to hackers. Well, they eventually went out of business, but it was interesting because it wasn't just them. It was companies that came around at the exact same time all throughout the world, including through Europe, that had the same data hacks at the same time and all went out of business at the same time. In other words, 23andMe was not a legitimate business. It was a honeypotting operation for DNA information by Google around the world through other ancillary companies to pull in that information through what's called cyber theft and then feed it directly in to DeepMind, their quantum AI, of which then goes and takes all that DNA information, and now they launch Alpha Genome. Exactly as I predicted. World's about to change, people. World's about to change much greater than we could ever imagine. All right, tomorrow night, late show tomorrow night, got a wrestling match, but we do have the live Q&A that might be paused until Friday or Saturday. I'll have to get back to you on that. I might be doing a show with Alpha tomorrow after this show. So keep that in mind. I'll get news and updates out about that and how that's going to roll for tomorrow night. So pay attention. Let me see here. Dun, 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 Mighty Mouse. I have that going through my head all the time. G Fontes 119 $1 Rumble rant. Anyone not familiar with stocks? You can, but fractional shares $400 to $500. Yep, you're right. You absolutely can. And anybody who's not into cryptocurrency and wants to get into cryptocurrency, you can go on over to my website, the new one right here, redpills.tv. And if you go over to support, the support tab, there'll be a crypto tab up there later. There's ways to support us with cryptocurrency, but if you scroll down to the middle of the page, right there, an introduction to cryptocurrency and blockchain, a practical guide. If you click on that, that's going to take you to my crypto course. And you can go over there and get the crypto course. And so what I recommend is you do the crypto course first, and then if you want more, you go to the consultation. But the crypto course is right there. So if you want to learn about that, you guys can go check that out over there. And then I was going in here for something, and I lost my something, and now it's yep, there we are. I'm going to leave you with this an amazing song, and all that is linked up on the website as well. You can also find this at Red Pills Music. You'll see it scrolling below here in just a second. Much love, respect. God bless, guys. Take care. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.
There was a time when our children stood tall, hand on their hearts, one voice for all. There was a time when honor had weight, when the flag was a symbol, not a debate. There was a time when our history was known, with pride in the rules that made us our own. There was a time, respect for the brave, for those who bled, for the lives they gave. Now the homeland burns in silent war. Truth is twisted, we can't ignore. Voice still calls, we the people will not fall. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil undone, patriots rise. We are one, land of the free, home of the brave. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time when truth was clear, when the media served, not ruled by fear. There was a time when leaders stood fast, guarding the people, defending the past. Now corruption wears a crown, lies are fed to tear us down. But Q said watch, and Q said see. The silent war will set us free. From the front lines, soldiers stare, wondering if we're still there. Their blood, their hope, their sacrifice will not be sold for a life's prize. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, the veil undone, patriots rise. We are one, land of the free, home
freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on. Or we will spend our sunset years telling our children what it was once like in the United States where men were free.
There was a time is near, the great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil undone, patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave, no more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time. There was a time. Now is the time. Do it.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation. I want you to get mad.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
These people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"